Hello, everyone, and welcome to Consider This, Consider That with Pastor Caleb, your Monday edition. It is April the 22nd, and I'm glad that you're joining us today. And even if you're not watching today live, I'm glad that you have taken the time to listen and maybe be blessed by Consider This, Consider That, as we take a look and consider about the choices that we make. Choices are so important. You know, the idea or the reality is that we are known by the small choices we make. And we always want to think about the big choices and how that we're going to choose that and do those things. But in reality, it's the small choices that matter. And we need to realize that. So we're talking about making right choices. And this week, we're going to talk about and consider the idea of choosing hospitality. Now, there's an old-fashioned word that's not used much anymore, it seems like, but hospitality, the act of helping others, or the act of being involved with somebody else, letting them into your home, spending time with somebody, and being the one that is maybe even caring for somebody else, hospitable when you have guests over. Maybe you would provide a place for them to come to. Maybe you'd even provide a meal. Maybe you provide games. Maybe you provide some sort of entertainment or something, but it is hospitality, spending time with somebody, being the one to invite people and originating the idea of coming together and spending that time. So hospitality is an important thing in the Christian's life. And, even in the secular world, we talk about hospitality. You have those that are in the hospitality industry and those that are people that make sure that you are welcomed when you come in. Those that, whether it's at a restaurant or a hotel, something like that, they welcome you. They make sure that you're taken care of and all the needs there, that they are hospitable. And so we as Christians need to do the same thing. And we think about hospitality in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 2, a bishop, which we call today a pastor, I would be considered, in terms of 1 Timothy, the Bible days, I would be considered bishop of the church. But a bishop then, or pastor as we call him today, then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, and apt to teach. And we call this in 1 Timothy chapter 3, it is the qualifications of being a pastor, qualifications of holding the office of bishop in the church. And a lot of times we'll take a look at it and say, that's exactly, the pastor needs to be that way. Him and his family need to be hospitable. And that is a qualification of the bishop, and it's important that him and his family do that. But in reality, I wanted to consider this, that hospitality is more than just a qualification. Hospitality, more than a qualification for a bishop, or for a pastor, as we call them today. We see the act of hospitality in Acts chapter number 2, starting at verse number 41. The Bible says, then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread, and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together, and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. What a blessing that this is, as we take a look at this particular passage, the actions of hospitality, and what that means to us, and how we should enact that today. They are talking about those that are believers that gladly received the word, that were saved. There was about 3,000 souls on this particular day in Acts chapter number 2 that got saved, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship. And that's part of hospitality, is fellowshipping together, spending time together. But spending time together doing what? Well, they sang and they ate together, breaking of bread, right? They prayed together. They talked about doctrine, the biblical things, in verse number 42. And then it says they had all things common. They began to share when somebody was in need. Oh, you have need of food. Well, I've got extra food. Let me run over there and I'll bring it to you. Oh, oh, you need some extra. You need something for your farm and for. Well, I've got something over here that we can bring over here. I've got an extra donkey. I've got something we can go over here and we can help plow your field. And oh, you need an extra bowl. You're having visitors over and you're needing some extra. Well, I've got some bowls and some dishes over here. Oh, you don't have enough to make bread for the people coming. Listen, I'll make that bread for you and I'll just bring it over. Had all things common. That's what it's talking about. Not just the big things, but had all things, even the small things. If it used to be, I remember growing up, you didn't have sugar, you would go ask your neighbor, "Can I borrow some sugar?" Right? And and we order it, right? And that's what we do. This has become our neighbor, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the reality is that hospitality is something that's more than just the pastor and his job and his wife's job. It's more than a qualification of somebody. It is something that every Christian should do. And when we are involved in that hospitality, when we're doing that, in this passage, you find that the Lord adding to the church. You find the Lord blessing the church and doing the thing. I've talked with people before and they said, well, I just don't always like to talk about the Lord. I think we don't always have to bring up the Lord every conversation. And I just go, well, I guess you're right. We don't really have to. I don't feel the need to always, every single time. But then I got to thinking about that. Well, maybe it's not such a bad thing. If I dread when somebody starts talking about the Lord, what does that say about me spiritually? You're talking about the one who died to save my soul from eternity, from eternal hell and damnation. And why? Why would I not want to talk about that? Why would I not want to talk about him and what he's done and his blessings and the beautiful day that he's given us? Why would I not want to talk about who Jesus is and the doctrines that he's showing me when I read in his word and I'm fellowshipping with him and he's speaking to me through his word? Why do I not want to share that? Or why do I not want to hear what he's showing other people? Well, that's just for Sunday. Well, that's not what they did in the book of Acts. They did it from house to house. It was daily. And they enjoyed talking about the things of God. We would rather spend time talking about hunting and the weather, I'm afraid, and politics than we do about the things of God. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to say that's the truth. That's what we see. Well, in the book of Romans chapter number 12, they give, Paul writes an idea of how a true Christian ought to be. This is not a qualification for any office in the church. This is talking about true Christian, individual Christians. In Romans chapter 12, verses 9 through 13 says, "Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. Not slothful in spirit, not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer." Now we don't have time to get into that. That's a good topic though. "Distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality." And that is not just for the pastor, not just for church leadership. That is Paul saying that every Christian should be that way. Every Christian ought to be given to hospitality. And we live in a society today where we don't want people around us too much. Keep them at arm's length and away, just let's not, I'm just too busy for people. I'm just too busy. And yet, that's what is the most important, is people. Jesus didn't come and die on the cross for our money, for our power, for our prestige. He didn't come down on the cross for even our time or our talent. He came down the cross for me. Me. He came down the cross for you. Because without Christ, I am destined for an eternity in hell. Without Christ, you are destined for eternity in hell. But Jesus says, I want to be with you. Well, I don't have anything I can offer him. I'm not good enough. You don't have to. That's the beauty of what God has done. He's shown us what true hospitality is. Give without expecting anything. Distributing the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. That's what every Christian ought to do. Choose hospitality. Choose to be somebody who invites somebody over, or going out to eat with somebody, or having somebody over to play games. Or just sit on the front porch. I've done that with several people. Just sit on the front porch and just talk about the weather. Talk about the goodness of God. Talk about what He's showing you. But spending time together is so crucial. It's so important. One-on-one. What we're doing here is not really hospitality, but I'm challenging us and encouraging all of us, including myself, to have hospitality. Had somebody not long ago ask me about people leaving the church. And I gave an answer. Didn't include this. This was part of it. It's kind of hinted in there. But reality, hospitality is part of the reason why people are leaving churches today and they're not staying. Because we're not truly giving biblical hospitality to each other. I may have to call that person up and give them that one-word answer and give them the text of Acts chapter 2. That's how we keep people in the church. That's how we keep people doing the things that God wants us to do. Because God adds to the church. True hospitality in action. That's how we do it. First Peter chapter number 4, verses 8 and 9. And above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins. And verse 9 says, use hospitality one to another without grudging. Great, here comes brother so-and-so. Guess I better have him over to my house. Guess they're wanting to go do something again. Better just do that. Oh, man, are they ever going to not bother me? We should choose hospitality, showing kindness to others, whether they can pay us back or not. Truly choosing hospitality, that is what will make the difference in your life and receive the blessings of God, in the life of others, and in church and outside of church, in your home, in your community. But we have allowed the things of this world to cause us to cease from showing hospitality. And we only expect it from a few people. But the reality is we are all called to hospitality. So this week, something to consider. God bless.